right, now welcome to step 3. We just finished the assembly of the printer. Now we need to do our operational checks on the printer itself. Make sure everything is set up properly, and like I was mentioning, checking the wiring and the mechanical motion. So there's a couple things that we need to do before we actually apply power to the printer itself. So following the manual via step 3, let's go ahead and flip to that. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up my workspace here and move this so you're going to be able to see this a little bit clearer. All right, what we need to do when we power this up, because part of the checks that we're going to do is make sure that we have the steppers moving the correct direction, which would be if we had plugged those wires with the colors the wrong direction, it'll actually rotate the wrong direction and hit the wrong endpoint adjustment switch here. If it does that in that case, because it's designed as the zeroing mechanism in the machine itself, it won't stop. So we need to be able to quickly turn off the machine and check for its proper operation. So what we need to do is, first thing is pull out this printed panel. It doesn't note this actually in there, but it has a piece of plastic on the glass itself. You need to pull this off because we're going to actually be heating this bed as part of the operation check. We don't want to heat it with a piece of plastic on there. That'd get real stinky and nasty. So go ahead and pull that on off. Okay, first thing we got to do is go ahead and bring the extruder head to approximately the center of the bed. This is the center right here, so don't worry about the back of this. Just bring this to approximate center and the center of this. And what we want is this printer bed to be approximately 1 inch down. So all we got to do is grab this lead screw right on here and thread this on down until we get about 1 inch right between here and here. And what this is going to allow us to do, it gives us the space when we turn this on and tell it to do a homing operation that it moves the correct direction. If it doesn't move the correct direction, we can quickly throw the power off on this and roll over to our troubleshooting and check what we possibly did wrong. Most likely in a case like that is the stepper motor is actually just plugged in the wrong direction. It didn't follow the color markings correctly on that. So let's go ahead and start rolling through that. Like I mentioned, we also want to, per this, we've moved it into place. We need to check all our wiring visually. Now that we are done with this printer, we want to make sure nothing was damaged, nothing was pinched along these edges. The wiring on the AC mains is all plugged in and still secure, and we roll through all the wiring on the printer itself. I've gone over this printer pretty well, and I'm pretty confident in all the wiring on this job. All right, at this point we need to apply main power to this, and main power meaning the AC current from your wall itself. We had touched on this several times in the operation that you need to make sure that you set this up for 110 or 220 depending on the region that you live. And if I roll it right over here, this is a standardized computer type of cable right over here that just plugs right in here, and here's your main switch itself, and it is fused as well for safety on that. When we turn this on, there's a couple things. I mentioned that we need to bring this bed over and about 1 inch down. Another reason for that is it moves all the magnets away from the limit switches, which allows us to check the limit switches for proper operation. When this is turned on, when a limit switch is not being triggered, it is glowing red. So we need to check for the red LED in the next step following this instructions on all of these switches. And then as we move these on over and it comes close to it, the red light will actually turn off, meaning it has been triggered. So if you've 100% verified that you have set up your power supply for 110, 220 for your region, let's go ahead and apply main voltage. We'll go ahead and plug that on in. Make sure when you plug this in that your switch is in the off position, and we'll move to the next step. Okay, I've got my main power put in. What I'm going to do is go ahead and turn on my main switch, and we're going to rotate so you guys can see this. And when we turn this on, this panel will go ahead and turn on, and it'll be lit blue, and after a few seconds we should actually get some indicators right here on this itself. There we go. So it's lit up and all set. Now, the first operational check that we need to talk about is the limit switches that we had mentioned before. So we've got this one right over here, and we can see, I'm going to rotate this around. You can see right here that it is lit up. And what we need to do is check all 6 of these that we have a red light indicating. Now, if we don't get a red light, that is a clear indicator that it has been triggered. There might be a problem with the wiring, something like this situation. So we've got a red light here. We've got a red light here. If we rotate on over to these switches, you're going to be able to see the red light right in between the motors right here, because here's the switch right here. We've got a red indicator light here. I'm going to work my way around to the back of this. Okay, we've got a red light here for the top and a red light right here on the bottom for our bottom of our Z. And then last one, I'm going to come around to this side. Right here, we've got the red indicator for this one. That's all 6. So those limit switches are turned on. They're plugged in correctly because we've got the lights and they are functional and operational. So go ahead and move that on over there. Next, we're going to take a look right here, our cooling fan. Just make sure it's spinning and turning on. So that means we've got 12 volts to that main bus and that our cooling fan itself is working. So the next thing we need to do is what's called a homing operation, where we're going to actually command this machine to start moving on motion. And this is the big one. This is where the machine comes alive. But the first thing we need to do is make sure that we don't crash this bed into the printer head. And this is a very tight tolerance between here and here that has to be set. Now, if you remember in the build process, we talked about this back plate where we have this adjustment right here, which adjusts the switch. If we take a look, as I move this, you're going to see this limit switch move up and down. What we want to do is turn this all the way till this limit switch is all the way in the furthest down position. And that's going to give us ample clearance between the print head and this. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and be adjusting this up later when we're setting this up actually for printing. At this point, we're just checking the operation. So adjust this so that this is moved all the way down into its furthest position, and we're all set for that. So in this homing procedure, it's going to do a matter of a couple different moves. And it's critical that it moves the exact direction at the exact time we tell it to do this, and this is how we're going to know that the motors are going correctly. Once we give the command for it to home, what's going to happen is the print head is going to move left, which for me is because I'm behind the machine, it's actually this way. But since for you looking at the front of the machine, towards the machine, this print head should move left, followed by moving front, followed by the print bed moving upwards. So when we activate this command, if this starts moving the opposite direction this way, meaning it was moving right, immediately turn off your power because this bed will crash into the side because we're not using our limit switch for the homing procedure. So it needs to move to your left, move forward, and then move on up. If everything is wired in correctly as far as the motors are concerned, it'll move over, it'll stop, it'll bounce off, it'll come over, stop, bounce off, and then the bed will come up, hit the limit switch, bounce off, and come back right on down. So let's go ahead and go through that procedure. So this is the first time we're going to have some interaction with our actual touch screen itself. I'm going to slide this back so I can have a look at it. So to enter the menu, we've got a lot of information right over here. We're going to talk about this in our next check, which is going to be heating up the print bed and the head and checking our temperature sensors. So to get into our first menu, what we're going to do is just press in on the knob, and that allows us to scroll down. As I rotate this knob, you can see it moving up and down. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to the first one, which is prepare. Push the button, and I'm going to scroll on down to where it says auto home. As soon as I hit this, it's going to start moving. Remember, left, forward, up. Moving left, hit, forward, and up. There we go. Everything moved the correct direction. We followed the instructions per the deal, and it absolutely worked flawlessly. And this was actually the first time we turned on the printer, so everything's good. Thumbs up on this. So now that we've done our operation checks in the manual as far as the direction, the switches, the heating and cooling, what we need to do is the absolute most important adjustment on this machine, and that is leveling the print platform to the extrusion head. The problem is that we've just assembled this machine, and we've got you know, a lot of play that we've taken out of the adjustments and made this really smooth. Problem is that this print plate can be like this at a slight angle, and this head's going to move straight across, which means it's going to be thick over here, thin over here. It's definitely going to mess with our print. So we need to get this a level so the first initial layers are extremely flat, and that's going to carry through the rest of the model. Now there's several adjustment points that we have on the printer to go ahead and get this adjusted out. Right over here, if we take a look at the print platform, there's 4 points on it, and you can be able to see a little spring right in here. And that adjustment spring is when this tightens down, it compresses the spring and allows this to be moved up and down. So in order to do that, initially what we need to do is get a good mechanical zero on the print platform to the acrylic. From the factory, it should be fairly close, but let's go ahead and double check it. All you need is something straight like a ruler. Now, in the manual, it shows that this platform is level with the acrylic itself, but in reality, it's this subplate that we have added that stabilizes the print platform. So you're basically going to be slipping this in between the two and checking for that level. So what I want you to do is take this acrylic as a base point, and you're going to just slide this on in and check against this yellow phenolic plate. It should be level across that. Check it at 4 corners. Now, how you adjust that, if it's a little bit on the high side, that one's okay. That one is okay. Let me come around over here. Actually, from the factory, they all came out okay. But let's just pretend this side was high and it was catching on that lip. All I would do is go right in here and adjust this and give it a 1/4 of a turn and check it again. And I'll be able to just catch that lip. And that's how you get an initial mechanical adjustment. Now, if your bed is really off, it might be easier for you to actually drive the bed on down. And it's in the instruction manual to be able to drive the bed on down to get to these adjustment points a little easier by getting it away from the head. Let me go through that procedure because it may not be clear in the manual. So in order to get this to manually be able to move it, we're going to go into our menu system. We initially get into our menu system by pressing the knob inwards. We're going to rotate the dial down to prepare. From there, we're going to slide all the way to the bottom where it says move axes. Press to enter that. Now, it gives us a couple options right in here, 10 millimeters, 1 millimeter. So basically, every click of the dial will equal that amount. For the Z axis, we're only allowed to move it 1 millimeter or less at a time. So we're going to go ahead and just go to 1 millimeter, press that. Now it's asking us what axis we want. We want the Z axis, which is up and down. So we're going to go ahead and just go to Z, press that. And as I rotate the knob, it allows this to drop down. So you can basically use the control system to drive this down, have a little better, easier access to this print platform, and easier to get into the wrenches to get this adjusted out. Now, once that is done, what we need to do is an auto home procedure. So we're going to start bringing this bed on up close to this printer, and then we're going to level it actually to the head. There's an adjustment on the back that we haven't talked about yet, and let's go ahead and talk to that. I'm just going to jump into here and just do the auto level. So once again, to jump into that, we're going to go prepare. And right there, I think it's the 3rd option down, auto home. Same as before, right, forward, print bed on up. There we go, we're all set with that. So let me turn this printer around and talk about this rear adjustment. So you notice the bed came up and stopped as well as moved over, and the reason and how it's doing it is these limit and homing switches. We talked about them a little bit, and what it is it just moves over at a set pace when you tell it to go home, and it keeps moving over fairly slow until it sees that switch trigger. Once it triggers, it knows, oh, okay, I hit this boundary, and it bounces back a given amount that's calculated into the device itself. So these switches are adjustable to a degree. So if we take a look at these, we have some slots right in here, and this allows us to dial in our print platform if necessary. From the factory, it's set up pretty well, but if you want to expand it out slightly beyond the normal print area and push your printer and do some other tips and tricks we'll talk about later, you can actually adjust these limit switches within these slots. All of them have adjustability. Now, the one that you do have to adjust is right back here. Now, this is your limit switch right here, underneath here, and this knob controls that. As I rotate this knob, you're going to see it's going to come up and down. And notice that red light is on. As I get close, see the red light is off. That is being triggered because it's coming in and out of where the magnet thinks it is. Initially, when we assembled this, we drove this all the way to the most downward procedure to do the homing procedure. So what we need to start doing is adjusting this up and rehoming, adjust it up and rehoming. Basically, every time I home the machine, I'm going to go ahead and just move this 1 hour. Once again, just like it was a clock. If it's a clock and it has 12 hours on it, we're going to move it 1 hour at a time. That's how much you need to move this and check the adjustment itself. So it's going to take a little bit of time. We're just going to basically click and try it again and keep going until, I'm going to spin this around, until the extrusion nozzle on the printer is equal to 2 business cards distance between the print bed and the nozzle itself. So you're going to need to grab yourself basically 2 business cards. All you're going to do is go ahead and slide that underneath the print extrusion head right there, and we're going to do an auto home procedure. So once again, go menu, prepare, auto home. You can see how far away we are. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is come back here to this back adjustment I just explained, adjust it 1 hour, and do it again. And I'm going to keep doing that 1 more hour, do it again. And every time I do it, the bed is moving up approximately 1 millimeter. Turn it 1 hour, press home. Turn it 1 hour, press home. Ooh, getting close, let's see. 1 more maybe. Okay, I'm gonna keep doing this until I can't move the 2 business cards. Right there, slight drag right on that business card right there. And that is perfect right there. Okay, so I've got 2 cards underneath this, and I've got this coarse adjustment on the back adjusted with our limit switch and our homing switch. So I don't need to do any more homing operations. And that drag is, like I was mentioning, just perfect with those 2 cards. Now, just because this is adjusted close to the extrusion head, we need to now do a fine adjustment via the adjustment points we'll talk about here in a second. But I need to manually be able to move this head around the deck to make these adjustments. In order to do this, we're going to turn off the power and disconnect our main power because we're going to be reaching on in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and kill that and bring our power out. Now with the power disconnected, I'm able to actually move this head slowly. If you move it fast, these motors act like generators and it's going to backfeed voltage up into your control system, and you don't want that. But you can move them slowly. So I've got the 2 cards. I'm going to slide this slightly out of the way so we can have a look. So we had the 2 cards distance right between the glass print bed and the extrusion nozzle, and actually right there it's tight, where over here it wasn't, which basically explains why, why we need to do this finer adjustment to actually level the deck. So what I'm going to do, and I'll move this out of the way so you guys can see this right here. These are the adjustment points that we had already previously talked about with the spring and the nut. This is a fine adjustment. It allows me to adjust this at 1/4 of a turn each time to adjust this now to a 1 card distance. Basically that secondary card was just there as a buffer, and the rest we're going to work on up into the extrusion head. So I should be able to take this card and slide it right underneath the head, and you can actually see it's tight here, but obviously over here when it was over by the first one, it fits underneath. So the bed obviously is at an angle like this, and that's exactly what we need to take care of. Now, like I was mentioning, the first layer is the absolute most important. That's why we have to get this bed as level as possible. Once it's there, it's definitely going to retain it. This is not an adjustment that you need to do regularly. You shouldn't, unless you move the printer or something like that, or throw it off. Other than that, you're going to set it one time and it's going to be dialed on in. So first thing we need to do is adjust it here, and then we're going to come diagonal over here and adjust it here, come across, adjust it here, and then come back over here to the front and adjust it here. So we've got those 4 adjustment points. Then we're going to do the process one more time, because anytime you adjust 2 points, it affects the 3rd or the 4th point. So we're going to run through it just twice. Once we're done there, 1 card thickness. That is basically everything you need to do on this printer to get it ready to print, other than just putting on some filament, which will be the last step. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to bring this extrusion head on over. I've got 1 card, and we just need a slight adjustment on that. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that out 1/4 of a turn. A little more. Right there. I can feel the card just barely drag right underneath the head as I slide it underneath it. It makes contact on both surfaces and just a ever so slight drag. So now I'm going to slowly bring it on over to the back and over to this side. And that's going to let me adjust this screw right over here. And that's really loose right there. So I'm going to twist this out and bring the head up. going to put this right on the corner. There we go. A little more. Right there, perfect. Perfect amount of drag right in that corner. So this corner was way high, so I actually had to drive it down. So next we're gonna actually just bring this straight on over. Adjust this corner. That's tight as well. So I'm going to be turning it counterclockwise. I'm sorry, clockwise. And this is awkward for me to do it at this angle so you guys can see it, but you get the point. Right there. A little tight. Perfect, right there. Now I'm just going to come right up over here and do the last corner. Right there, we've got that last corner. All right, now that we've got all 4 points on this, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is run this and do the exact same procedure all over again, because adjusting the rest is gonna throw off the first one, but second time around, we'll make sure we're dialed in 100%. So I'm going to adjust the head right over the last point, or the first point, and we can see now we're loose on this particular one. So I'm gonna back this off a little bit. Okay, right there, perfect. Same thing, back, over, just a touch loose there. Perfect. That one's good. And that one is a little tight. right there. All right, so the last one I'm going to do is just move the extrusion head to approximately the center and make sure we've got about the same. Looks good. We're right in there. I can feel it dragging on both sides. So that's it. That is adjusting the plate level. Now at all 4 point corners and the center, the extrusion distance is going to be great. So our initial layer is going to be absolutely perfect. Problem is if this bed is too close to the plate itself, when it pushes out the plastic, it does what's called railroading. Plastic comes out, we have our nozzle here, and it squirts out and creates a shape like this. And we're going to go more into about this in the tips and tricks. But as it extrudes out, it squirts out the sides and creates these bumps on each side. You can get these ribs in there. It doesn't adhere a lot of times to the bed very well. And the exact opposite, if it's too far away, it basically creates a ball. You know, it extrudes out the plastic in a round cylindrical. And as it lays down, then they basically create this. But it needs to have like a crush so it's touching each other to a degree, but not so much that it's squirting out through the sides. So the first layer is critical. From there, then it builds upon itself and it has a really nice tolerance, but that first layer is critical. So this adjustment, if you ever have print failures or problems with the print not adhering properly, or the first couple layers look like they're mushrooming out on the sides and things like that, always check the adjustment on this, and you can definitely fine tune this as well by turning these, like if you're getting some railroading, go through and give each one equal turns, like a quarter turn on each one, and try the print again. Other than that, that's it, guys. This printer is done and ready to operate. I'm going to go ahead and plug it back in. And fire it on up. First thing I'm going to do, because I've been moving the head around, is do what's called an auto home. So once again, I'm just going to push this button in, go down to prepare, go down to auto home. Okay, now that we have this basically set up for moving in the correct direction, we know that is all good. What we need to now check is that the cooling, the heating of the printer bed, as well as the heating of the extruder itself, is working properly. And the other thing is checking the temperature sensor. Now, the temperature sensor, if we take a look at the screen, I'll just explain this. And in the manual, we're basically at the next step, right over here, where it's checking these temperatures. And it explains right here what these different screens are, but we're just going to walk through it on this video. The first one right here is your extruder, the temperature of the extruder. The first number that is noted right here on the screen, which is a 25, is the temperature it is at right now. The 0 that has slash and then 0. 0 is its commanded temperature. So if I was going to print something with PLA and say it's about 220 to 230 degrees, that command would be like 220 degrees. And so this given temperature would ramp up to match that. So right now it's commanded 0, but right now it's 25. Now what you want to see is the given temperature of the print bed with everything off, and the given temperature of the extruder to be within a few degrees of each other. Because I mean, we're at ambient room temperature and nothing's been heated or cooled at this point. And right now we're seeing 26 and 25. Right on that. We're just a degree off on that. So we got to assume our sensors are accurate, assuming that this room is also 25 degrees. And the commanded temperature is 0. So what we want to do is go ahead and do what's called a preheat on the machine. And this is the first time that this machine is going to be fired up and heated on up to a given temperature. Now the preheat is going to preheat the bed and preheat the extruder. And what's going to happen is that it's going to go through a cycle. It's going to heat up, it's going to overshoot the temperature slightly, especially because I don't have any filament loaded into this, by a few degrees, and then it's going to come down and settle, and it'll just be locked in on that given temperature. Now, what you want to really watch for is that it doesn't grossly overshoot this temperature, meaning we might have a problem with one of the sensors itself. And by grossly, I mean if you see it, the commanded temperature, and it exceeds it by 10 degrees, you know, and then climbs up to like say 14 or 15 degrees above the commanded temperature, at that point, turn it off and roll on over to the troubleshooting section. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, depending on the temperature commanded, it can take up to about 5 minutes for the print bed to heat up. Most likely it'll print up really fast depending on the airflow and everything else out there, especially if we're just commanding it at 70 degrees for PLA. It should happen within maybe 2 minutes. The extrusion head will heat up actually much faster than that. So let's go ahead and go through those steps. So once again, I'm going to press in. I'm going to come down to prepare. Now I'm going to come down to preheat for PLA and press enter. So now we can see we have a commanded temperature of 180 and 70, and 28, you can see that it is climbing to match this 180 degrees. Same with this, it's at 26. And what we can do is come right over here to our bed, and now we were talking about the LED on the bed. See, this light is on, which means now we're applying current to the heated bed, and it is warming up at the same time. So we've got a light right over here. So at this point, let's just go ahead and watch the temperature. We can see that it's starting to climb. This one's already at 107. Okay, now we are approaching temperature on the extrusion head, and we just want to make sure it's not going to overshoot the 180 by, more than 15 degrees or so. It'll probably overshoot it by maybe, 5 or 7 and come right down, settle. Maybe a couple of ripples right in there. Okay, so 183, it looks like it's stopped right there. 182, right there. So the PID control loop on that is working absolutely flawless. We only had a 3-degree overshoot on initial warm-up. That is phenomenal. So this is going to be locked in really well with the filament on that. So now all we need to do is make sure the same thing happens with the bed. We're at 43 degrees, 44 degrees and climbing. Like I said, the print bed definitely takes much longer to heat up. Obviously a huge surface. It's got a lot of airflow around it, so it takes a little bit of current to go ahead and get in there and get warmed up. Now, another thing you're going to notice right over here, a little bit of smoking and heat, because this is heated up and we don't have filament in there. First time you build this, you've got little oil and residue from the rails, assembly process. You might have some smells or things associated with it. Just watch it, make sure everything's okay. Just make sure it's not coming from the wiring. In this case, obviously with the assembly, and I showed you that the rails are quite oily, I was touching the head on this and it's just burning off that oil. This will only happen the first time that you heat this printer up. After that, you shouldn't have any kind of smoke or smell associated with it. Now, PLA definitely does put off of a little bit of a smell when it is printing, but after it's done printing, the plastic has no smell to it. PLA has a little bit of a sweet smell to it when it's extruding and extracting. It's actually kind of cool. Now let's take a look right on down here. We are approaching 68 degrees, so it's almost at its temperature, and we're going to be able to see the PID loop actually turn this LED off when it approaches. So it'll probably hit 71 degrees, and then this light will turn off, and there we go, 71, and the light turned off. That means everything is working as far as the control and the PID loop on that. Our sensors are working properly. We have just done the full function test as far as the sensors, the motion, making sure everything is moving in the correct direction, the heaters, and the sensors for the heaters. So this printer is now basically ready for us to tram out the bed, load up some filament, and do a print. So that is the next step we'll go ahead and do. Now I've got myself a 1/2 kilogram spool of PLA eSun filament material. When you take it out, you're going to just notice some tape holding down the edge. Let's just go ahead and pop that off. Now, I've always gotten into the habit, because the filament, when they load it up, they always kink the edge to just clip off past this first tape mark, because a lot of times it's been kinked or something like that and might not load properly. So I just will go ahead and grab my side cutters, clip off a section, and the spool is ready. I'm going to go ahead and just put the drum on through, screw the end on it. Now this is wide enough for the 1 kilogram or the 1/2 kilogram spools. This is 1.75 is what this extrusion head was designed for, so make sure you guys pick up 1.75 millimeter as far as the filament is concerned. Go ahead and just go ahead and put this rod on through. Now the filament, when it gets loaded, let me turn this sideways, kind of like your toilet paper roll. Does the roll come off the front, or does it roll down through the bottom? What we want is the spool to come off and feed straight down towards the front. So I'm going to grab our filament right here. I'm just going to go ahead and set that in so we can see the spool is coming off and down towards the front. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this towards the front so you can see this. Now on the extrusion head right here, this is where the filament is going to get loaded straight on in, and we're going to be able to cycle and push this through right into the extrusion head and out the bottom. To aid this, what I'm going to do first is move the bed on down and do what's called a preheat. We've already done the preheat when we initially checked the head, but since we're loading filament, we want to preheat it so it's hot so we can actually push some of the filament through to basically purge the system out, especially since this is the first time. So let's go ahead and jump on in here. I'm going to just click on this. I'm going to go to prepare. First thing I'm going to do is move my axis down. So I'm going to go to move axis, 1 millimeter again because I'm on my Z. Come down to Z, hit that, and just kind of drive this down so I can actually see this. Okay, then jump back to prepare, and I'm going to come down to where it says preheat PLA. Hit enter there. So what we're looking for is our extruder. It's calling for 180 degrees right here. We've got it's coming on up on temperature. I'm going to start loading this in, but I'm not going to push it through the extrusion head until it's actually up to temperature. So all we do is line it up here with the slot. We're going to just slide this on through. You're going to notice right here that in between the roller on the stepper motor and the tensioning right here, and we can adjust this tension. If you have slipping problems with the filament coming through where it's slipping against this or it's too tight and it's stalling the motor, you can adjust the spring rate in here. It should be preset dialed right in from the factory, but if you need to make that adjustment, it is right there. Also, this is how you're going to change filament colors and load other ones as well. So I'm just going to basically give it a little push, and it's going to force its way through this roller right there. And so you can see it coming out through the bottom. Now the bottom has a cone to it where it actually enters into the extrusion, so you should be able to just push it straight on down. If not, just grab that pair of tweezers that I was saying that you need, and you can actually just come in here and just kind of help it line up as you push it in. So once it is aligned, it'll just go right into that hole, and it's almost loaded. So I'm just going to check my heat down here. I'm at 179 degrees. That's warm enough. I'm just going to go ahead and start feeding this into the extrusion head. Now you're going to fill it bottom out, and I'm just going to push this slightly. And as I'm pushing it manually, we can actually see I'm starting to extrude some plastic right here out of the bottom. All we need to do is stop. The filament is loaded. At this point, if I had a file ready to print, this printer is 100% ready to start printing, other than preparation of the glass itself. This spool is loaded and it's PLA, and PLA adheres pretty well to the glass. But preparing the glass with either some hairspray or a glue stick, you can even take white glue like Elmer's glue and thin it out with water and just kind of rub it on with a little bit of a paintbrush. Let it dry and then put that on there. That really aids with PLA adhering to this when it comes up to temperature. So other than the prep and throwing a file and SD card in there and telling it to print, this printer is ready to go. Guys, congratulations. You now have a fully functioning 3D printer. I hope you guys enjoy it, and for operation on different types of software, which are called slicer programs, where you're able to take a model, put it in this program, and it generates the code, puts it on an SD card, and you insert it in this printer and tell it to go. That is a different series, so definitely look into that if you're not familiar with that. But as far as the mechanics and the operation and this printer being ready to operate, it's a 100% to go. I hope you like the series, and as always, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will see you guys next time.